The U.S. Supreme Court is signaling skepticism of President Trump's global tariffs, with key justices suggesting he had overstepped his authority.
The vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress. So to have the president's foreign affairs power trump that basic power for Congress seems to me to kind of at least neutralize between the two powers, the executive power and the legislative power.
Bloomberg managing editor Jill Disis joins us now from Hong Kong. Jill, so just walk us through what actually went down with the Supreme Court yesterday and what they're saying about the legality of these tariffs.
I think, first of all, any legal scholar would probably caution you that obviously this isn't a decision. Sometimes justices do ask very specific questions in an attempt to kind of get to the heart of the arguments here. But what we did hear from the Supreme Court justices was essentially that, kind of indicating that maybe they're injecting some skepticism into the legality of these specific tariffs. Obviously, you just heard those remarks from Chief Justice John Roberts there. We heard some fairly, maybe predictably, probing questions coming from the more liberal justices in the court. But I think, more what traders are likely paying attention to is the fact that we also got some pretty prickly questions from Amy Coney Barrett, one of the more conservative justices, as well as Justice Neil Gorsuch. So, all of that is telling us that, there's at least that challenge coming from within the Supreme Court to try to push, the Trump administration here to sort of justify its tariffs, defend its tariffs as it tries to, work this case through the courts. It may still be, maybe before the end of the year, we will get a ruling in this particular case, maybe a bit longer, but it does indicate that there's some questions here about whether or not these specific tariffs are actually going to be upheld in a court of law.
And Jill, that is going to be the big question, but it's not applicable to, I guess, all tariffs. Are there any other tools that the Trump administration can try to use to ensure that at least some of the tariffs stay in place?
Yes, that's right, Jemana. So this is a case that's specifically referencing a lot of those reciprocal tariffs, the Liberation Day tariffs that Trump was implementing country by country. What we're seeing in terms of some other tariffs, such as the ones that we're going through Section 232, which you're seeing on your screen right now, those ideas of, those more industry-specific tariffs, many of which we've already seen, actually. I mean, if you're looking at things on auto parts, aluminum, that kind of stuff that the Trump administration has already implemented this year, those are other ways that he could pursue some of his tariff regime, even if some of those reciprocal tariffs were to be struck down. Of course, when you're looking at some of these options that he has for going through other regulatory requirements to try to get tariffs in place, were these tariffs to be struck down, it's obviously worth mentioning that a lot of that does come at a bit of a price here. There's a lot more regulatory hurdles that he would have to jump through, various probes and investigations, and may actually have to get support from other branches of government in order to implement those tariffs. So it's not as sort of immediately effective as what he's implemented through executive order and such. So, maybe he does ultimately get to a place where, he would actually be able to implement a lot of the tariffs that he wants to, but it would be, a much trickier sort of regulatory hurdle to overcome. So that is one avenue, or rather multiple avenues that the president ultimately has. Were these tariffs to be struck down? But I guess, first of all, we'll have to see whether or not that actually happens in front of the Supreme Court, and then where the Trump administration goes from there.